It ain't arrogance when you can back it up.
Seth Rollins. Some say he is the new Shawn Michaels, a gifted technician with a dark side behind the curtain.
He's gonna this whole thing up because he can't get out of his own way.
Rollins has a huge ego, which is no exception among wrestlers, but most of them at least pretend to be humble and try to be polite to others. Seth Rollins, on the other hand, is brazenly arrogant.
I knew that I was better than everyone in developmental. I'm going to say that right now.
His overconfidence, together with his anger issues, makes an explosive mix.
A frustrated, angry young man that wanted it all, and he wanted it now.
Rollins ordered his trainers around. In his mid-20s, he explained to WWE legends at the Performance Center how moves should really be executed. It didn't take long for things to go south.
It came to a moment where he and Triple H had a big talk. You change today, the first whiff I catch of this again, and we're done.
He also repeatedly got into arguments with fans, fellow wrestlers, and the competition, AEW explaining they can't hold a candle to his talent and skill.
But saying things like that make him look bad.
Rollins' WWE character is often portrayed as arrogant and manipulative. Critics argue that these traits are also part of his real personality. But this arrogance is just a mask for him, to cover something up that Rollins can't admit to himself. In this documentary, we take a look behind the curtain. We shed light on Seth Rollins' impressive career, his controversial nature, borderline statements, embarrassing scandals, and real-life feuds. With CM Punk, Ric Flair, Triple H, Brock Lesnar, and more. Many bridges that he burned down.
But he really was just a cancer to my career.
You are a conceited egomaniac who, quite frankly, is the biggest idiot that I have ever met in my entire life.
Even as a child, Rollins knew he wanted to be a wrestler. 6-year-old Colby Lopez was proud of his Legion of Doom shoulder pads and his Hulk Hogan toothbrush.
Ultimate Warrior!
Unfortunately for his mother, Rollins liked to push boundaries. He regularly attracted the unwanted attention of the whole neighborhood.
He was always the one to push the envelope. So we used to have a pool in our backyard. He would leave his shorts out there by the pool. He would dry off with the towel and then walk into the house, subsequently naked. We live at the bottom of a hill. People can see you.
Not a day went by without Seth making spectacular jumps in the garden.
And we started trying moves on the trampoline.
The first time he set foot in the ring, he was only 14 years old. Over time, he took it more seriously. People told him he was very good. At 19, he wrestled AJ Styles in a rundown gym in Iowa. It was a great match. The two still remember it fondly.
They had one of the best wrestling matches I ever seen in my life.
AJ was a guy who I loved for years and years and years. And I got a chance to wrestle him in front of, basically my friends and family. I remember thinking after the match, like, holy cow, this kid is really good.
Ring of Honor, when he first came in, was booked by a man named Gabe Sapolsky.
We were looking to fill the void of presenting very athletic and innovative professional wrestling.
He had kind of that gift to see something in someone, and he saw something in Seth.
As Tyler Black, he made a name for himself on the independent circuit. His talent was unmistakable, and the fans loved him. They loved his highly spectacular style. He did a Phoenix Splash, a move that most wrestlers would never attempt due to the high risk of injury. Rollins' parents describe him as fearless.
When he got his first speeding ticket, what in the world were you doing? Were you not thinking about this? And he said, of course I was. He said, but there's nobody around, so what did it matter?
Seth felt more and more restricted at home. He wanted to get away. The more applause he got on wrestling weekends, the more he looked down on regular people, going about their day in his small town. People who, in his eyes, hadn't made it.
I didn't want to be like my parents. I didn't want to be stuck. I didn't want to be like, the kids in the neighborhood who were a few years older than me that were just like kind of part of the system, part of the cycle.
Rollins tried to get into TNA, but instead of his first big success, he got his first rejection. To him, it was a slap in the face. He was the next big star, the face that would revolutionize wrestling. And they didn't see it. TNA didn't want him. An intolerable affront to his already inflated self-image. Still full of confidence in himself, he tried to get a contract with WWE.
I was talking with John Laurinaitis himself, who was head of talent relations at the time, and I kept trying to get a hold of him, and I couldn't get anything back. And I called him one last time. He offered me a contract to move down to Tampa and go to developmental and work for WWE.
Rollins was 26. At that time, he didn't even know how to do his own laundry. All he knew was how to put together incredible matches. Trainers quickly recognized his great talent, but this validation got to his head.
That's how I learned, and I think this generation, they need a little kick in the butt sometimes. It's got to be more believable, and you spend more time adjusting your knee pads and elbow pads than you do worrying about throwing a good forearm. They've got a lot to learn, a lot to work on, and so I try to give them some tools they can use to help them progress.
On social media, he called himself the best wrestler in the world. Perhaps inspired by CM Punk, one of Seth's mentors. Rollins trained under Punk. He looked up to him. Head of developmental Triple H had numerous arguments with CM Punk. The same arguments later came up between Triple H and Rollins. It was arrogance, thinking you're the best, not letting anyone change your mind, criticizing everyone, but not being able to take any criticism yourself. Shortly after arriving in NXT, he had a falling out with his boss.
He and I had a lot of conflicts over this, and he had it with the trainers, he had it with the coaches. He just felt like he knew, and he wasn't going to hear it from anybody else.
Rollins had no sense of authority, no sense of respect for legends of the sport who tried to give him some pointers. Sometimes he went so far as to tell his trainers in front of everyone else that they were doing a move wrong, and that he could show them how it's really done.
He was someone who wouldn't just be pushed into a corner. All right, this is the performer you need to be, so let's shave off your edges. Like, no, he fought to do things his way.
The only reason he wasn't kicked out long ago was his undeniable talent. But Seth wasn't done yet. He said he was ready for his call-up. In fact, he believed he had what it takes to be world champion soon, and he was insistent.
He used to call me once a month saying, Johnny, I'm the top guy down here. I want to come up. When am I going to get my opportunity? And I told him, hey, patience is a virtue.
I knew I had a lot to offer to the main roster, and I was not afraid to speak out, kind of ruffled some feathers occasionally. And some of those feathers that I ruffled happened to belong to the Red Rooster himself, Terry Taylor.
Terry Taylor is a wrestling legend, coach at NXT, and friend of Triple H. Together with Shawn Michaels, Taylor led the finishing class, the last of 4 stages before talents move up to the main shows. This is where the finishing touches are supposed to happen, but Seth Rollins didn't want to be fine-tuned.
Triple H was getting ready to get Seth and call him up to the main roster, and I said, he's not ready, he's immature.
There were debates behind the scenes about whether Seth was ready for Raw or SmackDown. Terry Taylor said he wasn't. He had had enough of a rebellious indie star who claimed that his way of wrestling was the only way.
You have to get rid of what you believe got you here, because what got you here won't get you there, which is the main roster.
And he thought that I didn't have what it took to be a top guy. And he made sure to let me know that on a daily basis in one way or another.
The old analogy I used with him is, I said, you speak French, but we speak English. And you think that if you keep speaking French long enough, we're all going to start speaking French.
I didn't appreciate that, and I didn't take kindly to it. I was losing my mind a little bit down there, I'm not gonna lie.
The tension between Rollins and Taylor grew stronger every day. They avoided each other, didn't look each other in the eye. At some point, Taylor blurted out what he had been thinking for a long time.
He told me, point blank, he didn't see anything special in me. And that I wasn't who I thought I was, essentially. I thought, go f*** yourself. That's what I thought. I've always been supremely confident in my own ability, and I didn't really care who he was in that moment. And there was nobody that was going to tell me who I was or how special I was or wasn't.
Rollins sabotaged himself. His biggest problem was his youthful overconfidence. Much of his behavior went back to the fact that he grew up without a father figure, as he later said in interviews. Rollins says he needed someone to put him in his place, and Triple H was ready to do that.
I've never met my biological father, so he is like my wrestling father.
And then finally, it came to a moment where he and Triple H had a big talk because I threw my hands up. I said, he's either got to go with you or got to go.
And we had a conversation right there. This is it. So you change today. The first whiff I catch of this again, and we're done.
I am 2 seconds away from pulling you out of this whole thing. I need to know right now, you either get on this program or you can go tell me how great you are someplace else.
And he, swore to me up and down that he finally understood.
This was exactly what he needed. Someone to show him his limits.
It was something that frustrated me, but it also very much lit a fire under me. And I was going to find a way to make sure that he knew how good I was.
And Rollins taking a chance.
Seth Rollins was really like a stallion that almost needed to be broken.
Right.
Despite everything that had happened, Triple H liked Seth, arrogant as he was. He reminded him of his best friend Shawn Michaels when he was younger. This sympathy covered Seth's weaknesses, and he started working on himself.
I wanted to be the face of that brand. I wanted to prove not just to the fans who I knew I could impress, but to Triple H and the brass in WWE that, look, I want this.
When we put the NXT title on, it was a big deal for everybody. They saw this as this incredible moment of like, oh my God, this is gonna be the first one. So there was a ton of people in this business asking me, why are you doing it with him? Because that was my call. I get how talented he is, but he's the biggest problem we have. Don't do it with him.
It was a controversial decision, but Triple H stood by it. He and Seth had developed a sort of father-son relationship.
The era of Seth Rollins has begun.
So I said, all right, this is over right now. I'm gonna forget about it. We're gonna go do business together. Don't make me sorry.
Sierra, Hotel, Indian, Echo, Lima, Delta, Shield.
A storm was coming to WWE, a merciless trio that would wreck its way through the roster. Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, The Shield.
Fighters, mercenaries, a 3-man SWAT team coming for a war.
They were reckless, aggressive, and ruthless, not just in front of the camera.
We were never going to take no for an answer. We were never going to be meek. We were going to push everybody out of the way. We were going to, we in our minds and our level of confidence thought we were so much better than everybody else. We were going to have to raise people up. That's how we looked at the locker room at the time. That was probably insulting to a lot of veterans, but we just didn't care. We're just going to run through every wall.
Seth Rollins in particular wasn't well liked backstage. He did not pay his dues. It is customary for young talents to offer the veterans a handshake and greet them with respect. Rollins didn't care about that rule. He greeted the wrestlers he wanted to greet. Randy Orton and Big Show took offense to that. Many wrestlers complained about Rollins and his behavior. But the Shield carried on in exactly the same way. Backstage, they were exactly the rebels they were in front of the cameras.
they had this, I don't know if it was arrogance, but this confidence that they couldn't be stopped and they wouldn't be stopped. And the reason why is they thought they should have been here a long time ago.
We all had the same mindset, which was we were going to go out every night and be better than everybody else, and there was nothing anybody could do about it.
The strange thing was that it worked. The three stood up for each other, and so their word carried weight. Triple H also went to bat for them and secured a big push for them. They won match after match after match.
I was in the locker room as the Shield is building, and there was such jealousy.
Not a lot of people get to experience the rise that we did.
As part of the Shield, Rollins dominated in his TV appearances. It was a great start to his career, and he was happy, but also plagued by fears about his future. He knew that the Shield would eventually break up, potentially leaving him adrift. Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns had a better reputation than him, so perhaps the end of the Shield would also be the end of Seth Rollins. The Shield split was first planned in early 2014. Vince McMahon, the CEO of the company, planned to break up the team during the Royal Rumble match. Rollins bit the bullet and spoke up against the idea. With success, because Vince likes people who stand up for themselves, who bring their own ideas into the mix, and that's what Rollins did. He said he should stab his brothers in the back and join the Authority.
In 2013, Paul and I came back as the Authority. Really, the authority figures in WWE. We're the bad bosses. We're the people who are treating our employees and our talent terribly, just to make a profit for ourselves.
They were doing the Shield and fully rolling and all that stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, like, they were as hot as they were going to be, and they were going to do what? There was really no place else to go. Tonight, Plan B.
Oh my God! Rollins assaulted Ambrose after he took out Reigns! What is going on here?
It was one of the most shocking moments in wrestling history, and Rollins brought it to life.
Working with Triple H so closely, you learn so much. You learn to think of things not in terms of moves or action, but in terms of story and the moment.
This moment put Rollins in the spotlight. That was his plan, to not disappear into the mid-card. He had set himself up for superstardom. Shortly afterwards, he won the Money in the Bank briefcase, a guaranteed championship opportunity.
Seth Rollins inside that briefcase has a contract that he can cash in anytime for a WWE World Title opportunity.
Rollins' course was set on the main event. Everything was going exactly to plan. He delivered, and each time improved on his skills. He loved the touring life, even if there were hardly any quiet moments. When he dropped his bags in his luxury hotel room and took a shower after an exhausting day, the drone of the running water morphed in his mind into the roar of the crowd, and he imagined what it would feel like to cash in the briefcase and become world champion. A thought he was forced to abandon because of an embarrassing scandal, a drama of jealousy and revenge on social media. Rollins' sex life was unconventional. Many changing partners, numerous dates at NXT, and with fellow wrestlers.
Seth Rollins is looking hot over there.
He continued flirting with female colleagues even while he was engaged to Layla Schultz. Then the cheater's paradise exploded all around him. She discovered that Rollins had naked pictures of Zara Schreiber on his smartphone. She then found out that Rollins had cheated on her with Schreiber. In retaliation, the ex-fiancé posted private pictures of Schreiber on the official Seth Rollins accounts on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. A little later, the situation escalated. Schultz wasn't finished yet. She posted various photos of Rollins naked on her own Twitter account. Rollins was mortified. He feared his career had just derailed. WWE reacted with restraint. Internally, Wrestlers were advised not to discuss the scandal publicly to not inflame the topic further. Rollins' infidelity blew up in his face. His relationships with both women ended. Zara Schreiber was fired a short time later after she posted references to right-wing extremist attitudes and a swastika. The many negative headlines put an abrupt end to Seth's title aspirations. You can't represent the company if you don't have your personal affairs in order. But for some reason, WrestleMania 31 was the exception to that rule. After a spectacular RKO, Randy Orton defeats Seth Rollins on a sunny day in California. As Rollins drags himself into the backstage area, he does not yet know that he will be making an appearance later. Shortly before the main event, an official comes to him and tells him the plan. He is to cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase against Reigns and Lesnar and leave that night as champion.
The idea to cash in the contract at WrestleMania was my idea, yes. Roman wins the Royal Rumble to chorus of boos. You don't want to give him this title at WrestleMania. Like, gets booed out of the building there when he wins the title the first time. Then I'm a hated villain. I win the title.
Rollins had good arguments on his side and managed to convince Vince McMahon, although his desire for his success naturally came into play as well. Rollins didn't want Reigns to win the title at WrestleMania. He wanted to win. He wanted to be on top. He wanted the biggest moment. But there was a problem, a time bottleneck. Rollins' appearance no longer fit in due to its spontaneity. WWE was signed into the pay-per-view model and thus obligated to adhere to a precise time frame. The clock was ticking and Rollins was getting nervous.
But at the time, we had to be off, done. And so I remember sitting there and like thinking, oh shoot, they're not going to make it. Like, we're going to have to do this tomorrow. You know, just hoping that my idea doesn't go up in smoke. And so fortunately, they are professionals and they hit their cue when they needed to, and the rest is history.
The heist of the century. An epic ending to an unforgettable WrestleMania. So many times Rollins had imagined this moment, even as a kid with Legion of Doom shoulder pads and Hulk Hogan toothbrush in hand. When he first stepped into the ring at 14, now the big dream of the visionary became reality. But it wasn't getting any easier from here. Winning the title brought him into a feud with Brock Lesnar, a monster in human form, former UFC champion, and ruthless in the ring.
It's Brock Lesnar's world. We're just in it.
You know what, man? He's an interesting dude. Everything that you've heard about him and read about him is dead on.
Lesnar's respect has to be earned. Roman Reigns already felt that at WrestleMania when Lesnar beat him down hard but safely. Rollins also had to take a lot of punishment because Lesnar didn't respect him. But unlike Reigns, Rollins couldn't handle it.
It was terrible. It was rotten.
I feel like
I know it's not PG, but I feel it. I had my first run-in with Brock Lesnar.
Now it's all about creating pain by Lesnar.
It's just like a little taste of what I know is to come.
Yeah, look at this, though.
Oh, my God.
That physicality.
Good God, man. Using the taped ribs to his advantage.
It's invigorating, but man, I've been running so hard. The dude wrestles 6 matches a year, and I wrestle 600. So I'm literally, I don't know. It's going to hurt, dude.
In interviews, Rollins admitted that he had real differences with Lesnar. Seth was frustrated that he wasn't respected, that he couldn't handle the harshness of wrestling, and that Lesnar appeared so rarely.
How did it feel with Brock's not here?
I mean, Brock's never here. So at this point, I've gotten used to it, you know? It's like all the other crazy stuff that goes on in this world that's completely wrong in every possible way, but it happens so much that we're just used to it, and we just accept it, and we act like it's normal, and it's not okay.
Lesnar didn't like Rollins. He didn't enjoy working with him, which led to conflicts. Rollins worked out great story arcs and brought tension into their matches. He treated it like an art form. But Lesnar rejected all the suggestions. He wasn't interested in 5-star ratings, he was interested in getting the job done. Rollins says wrestling is his life's passion. Lesnar says wrestling is a job to him. Their opinions were irreconcilable. It sparked disappointment for Rollins, miscommunication, and a cold, tense mood behind the scenes.
A disdain for Brock Lesnar. Is there any respect?
There's respect, but it's purely a professional level.
Rollins tried to calm things down between them. To appease Lesnar, he brought a pack of Coors Light, Lesnar's favorite beer, into his locker room. A peace offering. Lesnar laughed, but there was no real respect. It's so hard for Rollins to deal with a lack of respect because he respects himself the most. In his mind, he's always been one of the greatest of all time. But among wrestling veterans, there are differing opinions. No one doubts his wrestling talent. But legends like Bret Hart criticize his overachiever mindset. He overdoes things, tends to go overboard. For example, he got careless in a cage match. Catastrophe was narrowly avoided.
Seth Rollins was nearly impaled by the cage spike.
Wrestling legends repeatedly voiced criticism of Rollins that he doesn't think before he acts. In 2015, Rollins broke John Cena's nose during a match with a knee strike. At Night of Champions 2015, Rollins injured wrestling legend Sting so badly that he had to end his active WWE career. Even though it was an accident, it cast a bad light on Rollins' safety in the ring. In 2016, he injured Finn Balor's shoulder in a big title match at SummerSlam. In wrestling, accidents happen, but critics argue that Rollins' wrestling style should be safer, for his own sake as well. During a sunset flip from the top rope, Rollins landed the wrong way and seriously injured his knee.
My knee was a serious knee injury. I mean, catastrophic for some guys, sometimes career-ending, especially if you go back a couple of decades. You tear all those things in your knee and you're just not the same.
Among other things, he tore his anterior cruciate ligament and meniscus. He had to undergo surgery.
Day one. Coming back for the title.
Seth had to relinquish his championship. He missed WrestleMania and had to watch his rival Roman Reigns win the title. A part of him was happy for Reigns, but even so, he was angry about it.
I hated being there. I know I helped build that thing. It just ate me alive.
Rollins was terrified of the very real possibility that the knee injury would cost him his career. Many athletes were unable to return to peak performance after suffering the same injury. The doctors were unsure whether Rollins would ever be able to wrestle like he used to. That prospect led to an internal struggle in him. Then, Daniel Bryan announced his retirement from wrestling due to injury. Rollins said on Talk Is Jericho that he cried like a baby during the retirement speech. Tears of sadness, of sympathy, but also of fear. What if the same thing happens to him? Extreme Rules, 2016. Rollins is at Gorilla, nervously awaiting his moment. He pours a bottle of water over his hair, then runs down to the ring and pedigrees Reigns. His body full of adrenaline, he almost forgets that his knee is far from being at 100%. In his next matches, he wrestled a slower pace. Still spectacular, but not as light-footed as he used to. In his mind, he replayed scenarios of him getting injured. And then, it happened. Again.
Samoa Joe, he wraps me in the choke and just takes me down. The way my knee twisted underneath him, I felt it pop. And there goes my knee again. I thought it was gone. Thought I was going to be out for another 6 to 9 months.
Seth Rollins was supposed to face his mentor Triple H at WrestleMania, but the match was now in jeopardy.
could not believe it. I was like, there's no way I'm going to miss another WrestleMania. And then I start to question my body, you know. Is it me? Am I breaking down? Am I just not built for this? Is this the end of my career? Like, all of these sorts of things cross your mind, and to be able to bully your way through all of that.
After a depressing 2 weeks, he found new motivation. Seth recovered, and the match against Triple H was back on. But Seth was more nervous than ever.
Seth put so much pressure on himself.
Many fans thought the match was good, but they expected more. Rollins noted that he was far from 100% after his 2 knee injuries. It's common with knee injuries in sports that it's hard to get back to your previous level of performance. Rollins tried not to let it show. He cautiously strengthened his body and hoped for the best. During this time, Rollins was angry at his boss, Vince McMahon. They never had a great relationship. Seth was always a Triple H guy. If it weren't for Triple H, Vince wouldn't have looked twice at him. One afternoon before a show, Vince told Seth that he should look for a new finisher. The curb stomp was banned until further notice. The reason for this was that Rollins made an appearance on the Today Show, where they played a compilation of curb stomps. Vince thought it was too brutal. It made one of his top superstars look outright barbaric. He was also worried that children would copy the move and get hurt. Rollins had no sympathy for any of this and convinced Vince to allow him to use the move again 3 years later. But Vince always found something to criticize. His in-ring style, his attire. For example, he forbade Rollins from wearing the popular white outfit on a regular basis. Rollins then called Vince a weird old man in an interview. Nevertheless, the weird old man let him win the Royal Rumble. 2019 was supposed to be Rollins' biggest year yet.
Some people, some kids, they grow up and they want to be astronauts, they want to walk on the moon, or they want to win the Super Bowl. Dude, all I ever wanted to do was point at that sign and main event WrestleMania.
Unfortunately, the emotional speech was in vain. Rollins was not allowed to fulfill his dream after all. The main event, the most coveted spot on the card, went to the women this year, to Charlotte, Ronda Rousey, and his future wife, Becky Lynch, the most popular female wrestler in the world at the time. Out of personal bias, he couldn't be mad.
First time we kissed was Royal Rumble weekend. Little known secret. That was interesting because I'd known her for such a long time. Never really even thought about the other one in that way. And so even when we kind of started hanging out as more than friends, it felt really nice. We both were kind of like, no, but let's hang out, you know? And after a few weeks, it was like, why are we saying no again? And so, 6 months later, it's easily been the best 6 months of my life from a relationship standpoint I've ever had.
It's no wonder that Rollins would marry a wrestler. His entire life revolves around wrestling.
Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Claudio Castagnoli, obviously the Shield brothers and Mox and Roman and stuff. Like, these are people that I'd consider good friends, guys that I'm with all the time. It's just harder to maintain those relationships outside of wrestling.
Rollins only surrounds himself with wrestlers and wrestling. Over time, he lost contact with his family. He rarely calls them these days.
Sometimes when I visit, I do feel a bit like an outsider. So you miss out on those things, those memories and those moments and that like kind of tight-knit family unit relationship that you'd like to have.
Rollins has hardly any friends outside of the company he works for. WWE is his family, but there are exceptions. Matt Riddle, for example.
We had a bit of a real-life beef, if you will. I had a bit of an issue with him. You kind of got to see that play out on live television.
The conflict between Rollins and Riddle began in 2019, with Riddle's ex-wife publicly mocking Becky's body. Rollins assumed that Riddle shared these views, which led to tension between them. Rollins is very protective of the people he cares about, almost toxically protective. Out of loyalty to his wife, he will distance himself from anyone who has a bad word to say about Becky. Then, Ric Flair threatened legal action against the WWE because of Becky Lynch and her nickname, The Man. Flair had coined the catchphrase, "To be the man, you gotta beat the man." He filed a trademark application for the term. His argument? He had been using the nickname since the 1980s. After an out-of-court settlement, Flair relinquished his rights to the catchphrase. Seth Rollins was angry. He took Flair's actions personally. On Busted Open Radio, Ric Flair spoke about his backstage altercation with Rollins. Rollins was said to be very upset with Flair. Rollins ignored him at an autograph session, didn't deign to make eye contact with the man who upset his wife and threatened her career. Eventually, Flair smoothed over the conflict. He swallowed his ego and apologized to Becky Lynch. But Seth Rollins knows no life without drama. When the dust settled between him and Ric Flair, he got into it with Kenny Omega. Rollins wrote on Twitter, "When Kenny's done playing in the minor leagues over there, then he can come and work at the absolute top professional wrestling company in the world, in front of the most people, and make the most money, and have the biggest matches, which is with me, at WrestleMania." Legendary announcer Jim Ross reacted indignantly to these remarks.
I think it's a bad thing when you're knocking a company that's working their ass off to be good. Man, what do you got to bitch about? Are you kidding me? And here's why I'm pissed off about it. It doesn't do any favors for our business. Our business in general, any promotion is bigger than any individual. Not a classy thing to say.
But Rollins carried on. He started a heated Twitter feud with Will Ospreay. When he brought Ospreay's finances out into the open, he was criticized for his arrogance. "I'm sorry, little guy. We already have a better version of you here, and he just won his first US title tonight. Congrats, King Ricochet." Not only did this anger Will Ospreay, but also Ricochet. He found it disrespectful to be called a version of another wrestler. Then, when Rollins came into the arena, the fans started chanting AEW. Rollins never had the best relationship with the fans. He was very annoyed by them for a long time, and there were reasons for that.
I think most people just kind of want to get a hand on you, you know? A lot of strong pats in the back, like an occasional grab of an arm or hair, not like a grab of the hair, but let me touch the hair. Everybody liked the wet hair.
In addition to harmless incidents, however, there were also life-threatening situations. Fans jumped over barricades and tried to attack them. Dean Ambrose, for example, narrowly escaped a knife attack.
We had a series of jumpers. That was always scary. Weirdos would jump out in front of us just for a minute.
In November 2021, during Monday Night Raw, something surreal happened. A 24-year-old fan snuck over the security barrier unnoticed. He then charged head-on into Seth Rollins. Eyewitnesses reported how the fan pulled Rollins to the ground in an instant. Security and referees reacted immediately, trying to subdue the enraged attacker.
Instinct was just, as soon as I knew that someone was upon me, to control his head as best I could, because if he couldn't posture up, then he probably wasn't going to get anything done, hoping that he didn't have any weaponry in his hands. It happened so fast, and I just remember thinking, what is happening when he's underneath me, and then get off me.
What appeared to be an act of blind aggression had a surprisingly different background. According to media reports, the fan had a mental disability and had come across someone online who pretended to be Seth Rollins and reportedly scammed him out of a considerable amount of money. When the fan found out that he had lost thousands of dollars, he got angry at the real Rollins. The security forces immediately brought the fan under control, and he was taken into custody by the police. The live broadcast had to be interrupted, but was quickly resumed. Fans flooded social media platforms with reports and videos of the attack. It was not the first fan attack on Rollins. He had 3 other similar incidents in his career. It is the life he has chosen, the life he wanted. He loves wrestling. He loves being a wrestling star, so much so that he publicly defends his employer against criticism, including from fans. For example, when many complained about the boring WWE shows and blamed Vince McMahon for them.
I love Vince. Vince is not the problem, guys. I love Vince. Just trust me on that. He's not the problem. When I came to the defense of WWE, people were not happy. The online wrestling community was not too thrilled with me.
Well, maybe Rollins is breaking under the pressure because he's getting a lot of criticism. Maybe someday he'll be as over as his girlfriend. I don't know.
It's clear from his comments that Seth Rollins looks down on the so-called internet fans.
I've been the fickle 15-year-old that didn't think Triple H knew how to work, you know? Like, I've been these people. One August, they love you, and the next August, they hate you. Once you get to the top, everybody wants to watch you fall.
After these comments, fans were left even more confused. Critics accused Rollins of being able to dish it out, but not take it.
It's just hard to be liked all the time, you know? People will find everything to try to tear you down. It's just the way our culture is right now, and so they make you work for it.
When Dean Ambrose left the company and joined AEW under the name Jon Moxley, Rollins was disappointed.
I thought some of the stuff he said on the Jericho podcast was a little unnecessary, and I thought it was, is one of those things where he couldn't handle the pressure.
Rollins can't stand people who criticize WWE because he identifies with WWE, which explains the huge rift between him and CM Punk. Seth Rollins learned a lot from CM Punk, but the fact that Punk dragged his former employer through the mud after everything they did for him made him angry.
I mean, it really was just a cancer to my career. Every time he could take a pot shot at me or the company, he was trying to.
Rollins has spoken openly about his dislike for CM Punk. He called Punk a cancer to his career and a parasite who was intentionally trying to hurt him and the company he was working for.
I mean, hatred's a strong word, but it's as close to hatred as you can get. Like,
animosity?
Resentment, animosity, anger.
Punk expected Rollins to quit WWE out of friendly loyalty as well. Of course, Rollins didn't. When Punk returned to WWE, Rollins was absolutely furious.
And you weren't told he was going to come back at Survivor Series?
No. No, that was a bit of a surprise. Just another kind of, you can throw that on the pile of disgusting CM Punk moments. But don't worry, he's not selfish. He's in it for, helping everybody else.
The enmity between the two is paradoxical in a way, because they are extremely similar. There are clear parallels in their careers and personalities. They both think the world revolves around them. Both think they are the best. Like Punk, Seth Rollins has always let it be known that he believes in himself.
He feels like he's the best, and he very well may be the best. And if people don't think he's the best, he's going to do everything he can to prove to them that he's the best.
It's difficult to deal with rejection when you are that confident. But rejection is part of life. Rollins also encountered it time and again. For example, he was actually supposed to star in a movie, but his acting performance was reportedly not convincing enough. He applied for another role, but was rejected again. Outwardly, he concealed his frustration, but inwardly it was getting to him. It's a pattern. Self-confidence, but no real self-assurance. Arrogance is just a mask for him, to cover something up that Rollins can't admit to himself. His arrogance is shaky because it is built on a foundation of self-doubt. He tries to shield himself from his self-doubt, from the intrusive thoughts when he's alone in his luxurious hotel room. Sometimes in interviews, Rollins lifts that mask of arrogance for just a second.
Biggest thing is maybe I'm wrong, Maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. Maybe there are people out there that draw more money, perform better in the ring. That's the fear, right? Is that I'm just dead wrong.
It's not just self-doubt, It is fear, and this fear has been nurtured for many years, with every wrestler that got a bigger spotlight than him.
I was second fiddle to Roman. I still felt like he was the guy. It's just you're the placeholder until he's totally ready, and we're totally ready to put the ball in his hands.
Rollins struggles with self-doubt, with fear and envy. But conflicts grow out of this inner negativity. Rollins gives everything to the sport. He works tremendously hard, competes at almost all live events all over the globe. The fair reward in his eyes would be to be the undisputed #1. But others got that reward.
And then Cody comes back, and he kind of gets that treatment as well. I've always felt like I wanted to be that person, and I could be that guy. It just wasn't for me in the eyes of the people who were making those decisions.
Cody said in an interview that the argument between the two was very heated. According to him, they almost got into a brawl one time. Rollins was frustrated and jealous. He shouted at Cody. In the end, however, the two are professionals, and the publicity of the conflict was just a slip-up. Nevertheless, it shows that Rollins' frustration runs deep.
Feeling like I was being used to kind of catapult somebody else into a position I felt like I deserved. And so that was pretty, kind of demoralizing. I've never been the guy. That always just eats at me.
Seth Rollins' star power never quite reached the very top. He was always the ultimate runner-up, the straight A- student. In 2023, Rollins won the World Heavyweight Championship. It's WWE's second-tier title, the A- of championships. Not the biggest gold, but still big gold. For Seth, that moment meant more than anybody could see from the outside.
It felt very much like a full circle moment at Night of Champion. Almost like a wormhole back in time to NXT, to that first championship match, to him being there to raise my hand. It was very surreal. I think he said something to me along the lines of, "We've come a long way." When we were in there together, couldn't have meant more that it was us a whole decade later pushing the industry forward one more time.
Triple H put Rollins in the main events of WrestleMania 40 and 41, and Rollins even won the triple threat against CM Punk and Roman Reigns. He feels that Triple H has his back, something he rarely felt in his childhood and youth. The feeling of having a father figure.
I needed someone to be hard on me. I needed someone to believe in me. If I can be a Triple H to somebody's Seth Rollins, then I will have done right by him.
Triple H is like the father that Rollins never had. A proud, biased supporter who talks him out of his self-doubt, encourages him, and tells him what he loves to hear, that he is great. Seth Rollins became more mature over time. In recent years, his arrogance has faded, but it has never quite disappeared. Sometimes, you can still see him, the arrogant youngster who puts on a mask to appear invulnerable on the outside, because deep down, he is struggling with himself. Sometimes, you can still see him, the reckless teenager who would love to be as sure of himself as he pretends to be. Sometimes, you can still see him, the little boy imitating his favorite wrestlers in the living room, because deep down, Seth Rollins is still all that.
That kid that grew up in a small town in the Midwest, with Legion of Doom shoulder pads and Hulk Hogan toothbrush. I'm still that person. It never goes away.
Ultimate Warrior!